We are going to make a start, and we do have a quorum. We're expecting some others to come in, but there has been horrendous traffic on the road this morning, so they may just be unavoidably delayed. So I will start with the karakia, which I'll read, and you're welcome to join me. Whakataka te hau ki te ura, whakataka te hau ki te tonga, kia mā kina kina ki uta, kia mā taratara ki tai, he hi aki ana te atakura, he tio, he huka, he huhu, tihei, Māori ora. Apologies, we have apologies from Pauiwi Liz Kelly, who is actually at another council meeting, so can't be here for this meeting. So I just want it noted that she is on council business, and an apology for lateness from our mayor. We're not expecting her to be unduly late, but she will be a little bit late. Moving on to, do I have a seconder for those apologies? Thank you, Councillor McNulty, so we'll vote on those. Wonderful, thank you, that's unanimous. Do we have any conflict of interest declarations? I don't know of any. I'm not expecting there to be any. Are there any? No, that's great. Confirmation of minutes, I've read them, they are online. I'm happy to move that they be taken and confirmed, taken as read and confirmed as an accurate record of that meeting. This is the 14th of December meeting. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor McNulty. We'll vote on those. Okay, and again, that's unanimous. All right, so we will move to items not on the agenda. There are none. And that brings us to public participation, and I'm not sure whether we have our public participants there. Ellen's online, lovely. Oh, there we go. So Ellen, I'd like to welcome you to speak to us. I think we're just working on bringing you up on our screen. While we're waiting for that, I just would like to take a minute to acknowledge, of course, the terrible circumstances that we find ourselves in as a country, and I'm sure we're all thinking of our colleagues in local government right now and our colleagues in central government and all of those communities who are struggling with really unprecedented circumstances and just doing their very best to get things back to normal. Yeah.
She's not online.
No, she is.
Oh, she is?
She is.
Oh, there she
Kia
is.
ora tātou.
Good morning, Ellen. So you have 10 minutes, you know the drill, as you're representing an organisation, so that needs to include time for questions.
Yeah, kia ora tātou. Ko Ellen Blake aho. Ko kai toi toi e whanganui a tāra kia Living Streets Aotearoa, the National Pedestrian Advocacy Group with branches in Wellington. We often come to the traffic resolution meetings and generally make submissions on traffic resolutions because they are quite important to making sure that our transport system works, even when it's raining as much as it is now. And I appreciate you acknowledging all the difficulty that people are having around the country, Sarah. It's I just checked out my rain gauge earlier, and there's been over 80 mils of rain in Mount Vic in the last 3 days. So that's quite a lot for this time of year. So we always like to come to the traffic resolution meetings and have some comment, because this is the rules that really impact on pedestrians quite a lot, on how things work. So we're particularly appreciative that in the last little while there's been a section included on pedestrian impact, so that we can highlight that pedestrian place at the top of the sustainable transport hierarchy, and get some comment about how different traffic resolutions impact pedestrians. So I just haven't got anything particular to say about these, but particularly I'm keen to and support the electric vehicle charging devices in publicly accessible car parks at important destinations such as the libraries. So you've got 2 here, one for Tawa and one for Ngaio. And we support these in particular because we have started to see that some EV chargers have been put on footpaths in some places, and particularly in some countries, as it becomes a real issue. So good one, Wellington City. And we also support the traffic resolution to put a raised pedestrian crossing on Dr. Taylor Drive in Johnsonville. This is going to be a big improvement for people, particularly at the school. So it's really, really good. And another one that the couple of other ones was the bus stop in Newlands. This is going to improve services for the 350 people that use that bus stop. So good one. And also on Wiggins Street, notice that you're putting in some motorbike parking. So motorbike parking is quite a big issue for pedestrians, because if motorbikes can't find a park on the road, they'll park on the footpath, blocking it. This is what happens on Wiggins Street regularly. So it's really good to see the motorbike parking going in there. There was a proposal, I think a year or two even ago, from council staff to use little bits of road at the curb that is not big enough for cars to park on, but might be big enough for motorbikes to park on. So it's good to see that motorbike parking is being included, and would really like to see that rolled out in more places as well. So pretty much that was my only comments I wanted to make on these traffic resolutions. Thank you.
Oh, well, that sounds like you're mostly in agreement and supportive of them. So thank you for that, Ellen.
Absolutely.
That's good to know. Are there any questions for Ellen? I did have a small one, just following up on your comment about the EV chargers. What do you think the solution is for some more suburban charging? Because I personally have seen some situations where there are cords run out, across footpaths, taped down, but that's certainly less than ideal. So,
well, that shouldn't be. I hope that the council would take enforcement action against people creating trip hazards like that on the footpath. Mm. Whether it's taped down or not, they shouldn't be happening. So people either have to supply on property parking for their own private vehicles, or go and use a public service somewhere. And having vehicle services on the footpath, we just shouldn't be doing that for any kind of vehicle. They should be using the enormous amount of road space that we've devoted to vehicles for doing vehicle servicing. So having the EV chargers like at the libraries and the car park is a really good idea. So that people who might drive for some reason to a public destination like that can charge the EV at the same time. I think, as I understand it, EV cars, their charge lasts for a while. They don't have to be charging on footpaths all the time. So yeah, right. There's lots of if the council wants to provide EV chargers in suburban places, you can put them on the road. There's some really good models of how you might do that, and it could be not just for EV cars, it could be for other EV vehicles, it could be for phone charging as well. I think we're seeing with this current emergency that people being able to charge phones is once again really important service for people.
Thank you for that. Are there any last questions for Alan? Well, thank you, Alan. You've been very economical with your time, and thank you, as always, for your feedback and the time you put into informing us. Thank you.
Thanks.
Right, kia ora. So next up is Alex. Kira, welcome, Alex. You're welcome to either come to the podium or sit at the table. We're easy, relaxed as to which it is. And you will have 5 minutes as an individual. And that does need to allow time for us to ask questions if you wish to allow for that.
Thank you. Thank you for taking the time to listen to me. I think I'll just keep my talk extremely brief. I've already put some of the sort of very obvious things that has caused the delay onto the development while what I'm seeking. Some of the other things which I just want to point out as a fact was the sewage also, in terms of a pumping station, caused us some serious cost overruns up to the tune of over 200,000. We also had to put in electricity. Again, I know that's not a council thing, but again, there was over $200,000 in terms of providing electricity for the building, not to mention also the internet. And COVID and a lot of the other things that I've already mentioned, I'm just wanting to be brief and not repeat all of that stuff. But I think it's a lot of that pressure that has caused, and no doubt in this age with interest costs and time, that's all added a cost and a stress. It is a build to rent development. It is not, so it is provided, in my opinion, accommodation to the city. It is not a kind of a developer job where we're trying to sort of do something and run away. And all I'm seeking is a support of the council. I'm not denying the liability. I absolutely, truly understand that. I also understand through various information that is out there that council is under pressure in terms of funds and everything. If it is of any, if it helps versus I'm happy as a goodwill or something to pay 5, maybe 10% up front, if that kind of makes it more palatable. So, and again, you know, that's all I want to say. I don't. Over to you if you have any questions.
Thank you. I think we may have some. My question really was, are you saying that the build to rent model is what's causing the current difficulties? If you had built these to sell, would you be in a different position?
I wouldn't know any better, but I would like to think so, because if I was to sell, well, obviously the money comes in. In terms of a build to rent, the cash flow is only the rentals that comes in. This is a big sort of payday kind of thing.
Okay, I see Councillor Paul has her hand up.
Kia ora, Alex. So do you mean that you'll be the landlord and people will rent out all of the...
That is correct.
Oh, yeah, okay. Thank you.
Councillor McNulty.
Good, thanks for coming to talk to us. So I think I saw on the paper 90% of the building you'll own, but there will be some units that are sold. Are those just commercial units in the 10%, or will you be selling some of the residential units as well?
No, it's only the residentials. There are 6 residential units that, before we started the build, the bank had asked us for a pre-sale.
Okay.
That is correct.
I think it says there were some outstanding other charges, building consent fee. Is it?
It was all paid up and cleared up early January.
Okay. Yes.
Mid-ish kind of January. That's all been settled.
Yes, I think the officers did let us know that. Thank you for that, confirming that, though. Is there anything else you'd like to say, or are there any other questions? You do have a little bit more time.
I just want to thank you all for listening on to me, and I'll respect whatever decision I get.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Okay, well, that brings us to the end of our public participation. Just to making sure, of course, we did have a lady who was anxious to know that we'd read her submission. Can you remind me of her name?
Angela.
Is it Angela, who submitted on the Broadmeadows proposal for dotted yellow lines? She was just very anxious to have that read at council, but it is there in our attachments, so I know you would have all read it. We will move on to the next part of our meeting, which is actually, I invite officers up to introduce the first report, which is I think it is the request for the postponement of development contributions for 47 Vivian Street. So I'd like to invite Officer Nicola Tita, and we also have Officer Mark Pattermore, who will introduce the paper for us, and then we can have questions. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor. We've just heard from Alex, and I take the paper as read, so I won't go through it word for word, perhaps just to highlight a few points. So the application is to consider a postponement of development contributions for 47 Vivian Street. The amount would be a bit over 319,000, almost 320,000. Just important to mention, it hasn't been included in Council's budget forecast, and some notes in the discussion about the financial impacts of that for Council. In fact, we haven't budgeted for that. While the policy says that any decision is made on its own and doesn't set a precedent, of course, there's always the risk that if Council agrees to postpone this, we might have more applications and requests for postponements. Yeah, I certainly wanted to confirm what Alex said. With those building consent fees have been paid. They hadn't been at the time of writing the report, but they have now been paid. So the officer recommendation, there's a few recommendations there, but primarily that the request be declined, but happy to, through the chair, to take questions. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Do we have questions? Yes, Councillor McNulty.
Just to remind me, I know we've done some hardship grants in the past, but what was the maximum amount that we've granted in recent years on that basis?
I think it was 5,000,
Okay.
roughly.
Are there other questions? Do we have any idea of the impact rates or our debt levels if we were to undertake a sort of a slow repayment system such as has been proposed?
Not an exact metric. The advice is in that in the discussion, numbers 22 and 23, where the advice from finance team is that postponing the payment will result in a higher than planned debt balance, which places pressure on a constrained balance sheet, and the interest attributable to the additional debt would have a negative rates impact. So that's kind of the that's the advice we've received from finance without having specific metrics around that.
Mm. Thank you. Are there any other questions for officers? No. Okay, thank you very much. Right. Okay, so I will go ahead and move this paper with the officer recommendations. It's actually my view that we do need to follow officer advice and recommendations in this instance. This is quite a big amount that we're being asked to consider a different sort of payment system for. And my own view is we do have rules. And while I have every sympathy for developers and the difficulties they face, I think there's just so many difficulties that people are facing at the moment that we have to keep everything in a really broad perspective here. So my own inclination is certainly to follow the officer's recommendations. I don't think there's terribly much more to be said. The paper is clear. But do I have a seconder? Councillor Calvert, would you like to speak now? Or?
Just to endorse what the chair has said herself.
Is there any other debate? Councillor McNulty.
Yeah. So Alex, I just want to say I do have sympathy for what you're doing, and I appreciate that we are putting more rental units into our city where they're desperately needed. We are in the middle of a 12.8%-ish rates increase for the city, and I personally feel that just constrains us in terms of anything we can do for any business, regardless of the public good that comes out from it. So do have those sympathies, but again, I'm inclined to agree with Sarah and Diane, Councillor Calvert and Councillor Free here on the officer's recommendations.
Is there any further debate? I don't think I need a right of reply, so I think we'll just put this one to the vote. So we will now vote. We're voting on officer recommendations as they stand. So if you, yes, so I think we can take them all together, and basically if we're agreeing, we're agreeing, and if we're not agreeing, we're not agreeing. Does anyone want to take anything separately? Okay. So we will now vote. And that is carried unanimously. We'll move on to the next item in our meeting, which is item, sorry, I think the next one is the proposed road closures, and I actually invite to the table our officers to answer questions if there are any. So thank you, Maria Tuamo and Sean Woodcock. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Free. It gives great pleasure to actually introduce these proposed closures and also to introduce Maria, actually, who has been very busy, which is generally a great sign for our city because it means lots of things are actually happening. So we have a couple of new events that have been proposed, and to list those, and I won't go through them again in detail because they're actually in the paper, but we have the Newtown Festival Side Street Showcase. With this one, I'd like to clarify that there are 3 dates proposed. And you may, of course, notice that the first date actually clashes with the Newtown Festival. Of the 3 dates, the first 2 being Saturday 4th and Sunday 5th of March, and Saturday 1st and Sunday 2nd of April, they are considered to be contingencies by the organiser of the Newtown Festival, should the Newtown Festival not be able to be held. So if the Newtown Festival is able to be held as scheduled on the 5th of March, these 2 events will not be required. However, obtaining permissions for road closures means that we actually have to obtain permission for that. The event on Friday the 14th of July to Sunday the 16th of July, part of the Matariki celebrations, is planned to go ahead. On top of that, we also have Summer Session at the Basin, which is a new event, as well as 2 repeat events for our city, being Beers at the Basin as well as the Wellington Marathon. So
Thank you. Are there any questions? I actually do just want to make sure I'm completely clear about this. So if the event, the Newtown Festival, can't go ahead in March, then we don't have the Side Streets Festival at that point. We wait for the second date. Which is this what's going to happen?
Would wait for the third date being in July. So if the Newtown Festival does go ahead, we don't have the Side Street Festivals on the weekend of the 4th and 5th of March, nor on the weekend of the 1st and 2nd of April.
And what's the situation if for some reason the postponement date has to be called in for the Newtown Festival, so the Newtown Festival is postponed to the April? It just seemed a little unclear as to when you would have the Side Street Festival and under what circumstances.
The Side Street Festivals will not happen if the Newtown Festival as the whole big thing happens on the original date and on the postponement date.
Okay.
So if, for instance, there's a reduced crowd imposed for
either date,
pandemic or whichever, then the smaller showcase, Side Street showcases will be the organisers' plan.
Okay, I guess we'll just have to wait and see exactly how it pans out. But we're hedging our bets somewhat by approving this, and also in any event, my understanding is it'll go ahead at Matariki.
Correct.
If it hasn't already happened.
Yes, correct.
Yes, okay. And my other question was, we've got quite a time span here for what we're approving. It goes through right till November with the Bears at the Basin.
Yes.
But will there be things that come to us for the in-between calendar as well, or is this basically all the events?
I present the events as I receive them to be for the event of our organisers to actually present to you when I get them. So as we go on, we will have all the other things that might come in. I've actually notified all the organisers, say that the Regs committee has changed slightly, it's a bit longer, and you need to get them in really early to make sure they cover the dates they want them in the month.
So we're looking at the really organised ones.
We are.
Okay, great. Are there any other questions? No. I've actually asked Councillor Calvert if she would mind moving this.
Okay, very happy to move the officers' recommendations, and I think officers we're correct in opening saying this is a good sign to see that our community groups are willing to invest in our city, especially given what's happened over the last couple of years and a bit of uncertainty. So very happy to move and support these recommendations.
And is there a seconder? Councillor Paul, do you wish to speak? No? Is there any debate? No? Let's put it to the vote.
Thank you. Thank you.
And again, that's passed unanimously, and thank you very much for your work. Okay, moving on. We're up to the naming for the private right-of-way in Paparangi, and I'd like to invite Carleen Thomas to the table. Thank you. Thank you very much for your work. We're looking forward to hearing you introduce the paper.
Kia ora. Tēnā koutou katoa. I'm very happy to introduce this paper, which is proposing a name for a private right-of-way in Paparangi, namely Hātepe Whareroa at number 8 Bushland Grove in Paparangi. In introducing this paper, I'd like to acknowledge the mana and generosity of Ngāti Toa and also Porirua City Council in allowing Wellington to take on the role of kaitiaki of this name. The name was originally gifted by Ngāti Toa to Porirua City Council. Thank you.
Are there any questions? Yes, Pauiwi Holden.
Kia ora, thank you for that. I'm supportive of the new name, Te Hātepe Whareroa, but I did have a question around, I couldn't see anywhere that Taranaki Whānui had also been looped in the process. Have they, or?
There was some consultation with the local marae. The advice that we were provided with by the council iwi partnerships group did indicate that this wasn't a site of significance for Taranaki Whānui, and so that is why we didn't approach Taranaki in the first instance.
Okay.
This name was suggested by the developer, and we investigated the name, this name, as a first port of call.
Thank you.
Kia ora. Not to undermine or underestimate the significance of Taranaki Whānui and their interests in Wellington and the Rohe.
Thank you. I guess I would just make the point that while I'm supportive of the new name, I think it is important as a matter of principle to loop Taranaki Whānui in as well. I'll just leave it there.
Kia ora, yes.
Yeah.
I acknowledge that and respect that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. Are there any other questions? No? All right. Well, Tam, Councillor Paul, are you sure you don't want to? No? Okay. You can maybe like second.
Cool. I'm really happy to move this paper. Thank you so much for all the mahi you've done. Thank you for answering my questions about whether it was Paparangi or Papararangi. But I really enjoyed reading through a bit of that history and stuff like that. It's a beautiful, gorgeous name. I love our manu, and I love that we can celebrate them, and that little kids growing up around here will maybe learn a bit about the Pipi Whareroa. So yeah, happy to move.
You have a seconder? Thank you. Do you wish to speak? You don't? Well, I will quickly. I just think I agree completely. I think it is a lovely name, one of the prettiest, nicest names we've had the pleasure of bestowing. So yeah, that's all I've got to say. Thank you for your work down there in the end of the table. I know it's not always easy either. Yeah. Right. Well, right of reply.
Briefly say that I totally tautoko Pauiwi Holden's kōrero there that if we can bring Taranaki Whānui in, because I'm sure it's all the whenua is significant whenua, so yeah, it'd be great to bring them in if possible, but totally respect that there's capacity constraints and stuff. Yeah, kia ora.
Wonderful. Let's vote. And that's carried unanimously. Such agreement today. Now I'm sorry that I you came. I didn't acknowledge Councillor Paul and Councillor Calvert when you did come in, but I did explain that the traffic was particularly heavy this morning, and I'm sure that was the reason for you to be delayed. And welcome. And I'm going to be brave and try some of the kōrero. I'm going to try for the first time. So we're moving on now to item 2.4, which is the new leases for existing lessees. And this one, I have the pleasure, Naumai Parish Evans and Sanjay Patel, ki te hora e te kōrero. And please welcome Parish and Sanjay to introduce the report.
Kia ora, councillors. I am not Sanjay.
I'm so busy trying to concentrate on.
No, that's absolutely fine. Mordina, Kim Fell has asked me just to introduce this paper because he's not available today. So, so reasonably straightforward paper. So 3 existing occupants on council land with ground leases for tennis clubs. So Miramar, Churton Park and Johnsonville Tennis Club. I'll take the paper as read. I think the only thing really to note in this paper is that for the Johnsonville Tennis Club, we're proposing a slightly shorter term than standard due to the spatial planning work and the growth projections in Johnsonville, and to allow a little flexibility in terms of what might happen with the adjacent Memorial Park.
Oh, thank you. Are there any questions? And welcome to the Mayor. Councillor Calvert.
Yeah, I'm just a little bit curious about Johnsonville because it has been seen as an area of or deemed to be an area of growth since 2013. So just taking even more time to understand what that might be. So is there any reason why we haven't thought about that before now? I mean, I know you need more time, or there might be some possibilities, but given it has been deemed to be a metropolitan centre for some time, I'm just curious to understand why some of this thinking hadn't been done a bit sooner.
Yeah, I'm not sure that we're the right people to answer that question. That's a question around long-term planning for that area. I guess what we're signalling here is that the spatial plan, which came out last year, 2022, has recognised this area and identified that we need to do some future planning around open space provision. So that work is reasonably recent. We've tried to take a really pragmatic approach here. We recognise that the tennis club is providing an important service for that community. They have been flatlining, I think, in terms of membership. The team has worked with them over the last wee while around helping them to understand the broader context in Johnsonville, and I think we've landed in a really sensible and pragmatic place in terms of giving them some certainty of the sort of short to medium term, but also allowing the flexibility for council as broader plans kind of start to take shape in that part of the city.
Thank you.
I have a question, and that's really, I think, just confirming something that I think we discussed in the pre-meeting, that the tennis club is reasonably comfortable with this and that there are some other options if we got to the point where we definitely had another plan.
Yeah, we've been working with them quite closely, and we did a bit of a pre-engagement with them before the assessment went public. I think they're quite on board and understand that there's going to be some growth area there, and we have some provision to play around with the timing of that if we need to. And we've worked with them on a bit of a maintenance plan for the next 10 years. So we feel like quite comfortable that if anything does change, we can adjust.
All right. Is there any further questions? If not, thank you very much. Sarah, I believe.
Yeah, so I just wanted
to say a few words.
I just wanted to acknowledge Sarah here. So Sarah is leaving us on the 10th of March for a very exciting opportunity. She's been appointed CE of Recreation Aotearoa. So I'm not sure if you're going to be coming in front of council again before then, but yeah, just wanted to acknowledge your several years of service to council.
Yes. Yeah, congratulations. And I'm really sorry I didn't notice it. I was so busy trying to get my te reo correct that I didn't even notice. But, really appreciated working with you. I'm sure I'm speaking for others as well when I say that, and wish you all the best. Yeah, your skills will be very missed. But yeah, great. Oh, goodness. All right, do we have, I've actually asked Councillor McNulty to move this one, as two of these leases are in the Northern Ward. Do we have a second? Yep. Okay, Councillor Calvert, great. Yeah.
Cool. Just want to introduce the paper today and thank the officers for the work. Very grateful around the reduced lease period for the Johnsonville Tennis Club. That area is going to become a fantastic park in time. It's woefully underutilised at the moment with the Wanaka Street play area to the side being about 4 benches, and we can do things like Pokahuia in Newlands with that. So just signalling clearly that I'm happy that as we move into the long-term plan, we have made this call here to also be a bit more flexible with the lease so that we can think about how that park works together in Johnsonville, and I'll leave it with that.
Anyone else wish to speak? Yes.
Yes, and I support Councillor McNulty's comments. I would just like to add, though, that I think, and it was part of my questioning, this area was deemed to be a major area of growth back in 2013. In fact, it was on the plans. So I acknowledge that the Park Sports and Rec team became more aware of it a year or so ago through the spatial planning. However, I think it's an important point when we make plans for our city that all parts of council are aware and start planning for those changes, because now we're 10 years later from when this council decided this area was going to be a high growth area and it was put in on the district plan. So just really, I think it was just important that when we make these decisions that it is shared amongst the whole organisation and the thinking starts then, not 10 years later or 9 years later. Thank you.
Yeah, good points. If I may just say a few words, I think there's a challenge here between wanting to move quickly and yet needing enough time for people to kind of adapt and flow around our decisions, especially if they are community organisations. So I think it stood out that this time there's a signal being sent, because our normal lease policy would be 10 years plus a 10-year right of renewal, and signalling 5 years with a 5-year right of renewal is definitely a clear signal. I think I take on board what you're saying. It is a very strategic location. It's right beside our swimming pool and our new library, and we know there's a shortage of green space in Johnsonville and space that's suitable for teenagers to do things. But at the same time, it's quite a big ask to relocate a tennis club. But the signal's definitely there. And that's something we can look at further in the long-term plan next year as well. But good points. Is there any further debate, or would you like your right of reply, Councillor McNulty? Any further debate? No need for a right of reply? In that case, let's put these officer recommendations to the vote. Unanimous. What unanimity we're enjoying. Thank you very much. Alrighty. So we're moving on finally, not quite finally, to the traffic resolutions. Brad. So now my Brad Singh, ki te hura I te kōrero. So I now invite Brad to the table and Alejandro. Thank you.
Good press that. Kia ora, councillors. Gives me pleasure to present to you our latest round of traffic resolutions. With me today is Ivandro. He is our newest team leader of traffic and resolutions, and he will be here to provide technical support for any questions you may have on any of the resolutions that have been put forward.
Right. He patai me utu I mua e te tau patu patu. And that is, does anyone have any questions before we move into debate? Yes, Councillor McNulty.
Kia ora. Just wondered, initially we were looking at a resolution in Chesterton Street in Johnsonville as well to be included in this batch, but it's come out for what's in front of us. Can you explain what went on there? Something to do with a notification, I believe, that we may have gone to consultation before notifying residents. Is that correct?
I remember that one. So what happened there was it did go out for consultation, and I think that not all residents got the letter drop, and so we had to pull it out and put it out again. So,
would we expect that to be in the next round of traffic resolutions?
Yes, we'll aim to get it to the next round.
Okay.
Are there further questions? Okay. Well, I've asked Councillor Abdurrahman to move this paper.
Yeah, I moved the paper. I think it's most of them. It's just around schools and the community got a good feedback in that space, so no much opposition on them. So I'm moving the paper to be accepted and voted on.
Thank you. Do we have a seconder? Anybody? Yeah, Councillor McNulty. Nothing to say. I just want to say very quickly that it was nice to have our advocate from Living Streets come and actually wholeheartedly endorse what we're doing. That's not always the case. And I noticed actually a very high proportion of positive responses to all of these traffic resolutions, with perhaps one exception. But in that case, the councillor in that ward is quite happy with the resolutions we're moving. So I think I'm very, very comfortable to take all of these pretty much as officers' recommendations. I think we're moving very steadily and with quite a lot of resolve towards making things better for our walkers and our bus users and encouraging the kinds of transport and mode use that we want in our city. And yep. It's a big lot of work to do, but I think we're cracking through it. So thank you very much to the officers, because the details in here actually take a lot of time to work through, and the amount of, I really also appreciate the way in which you respond in detail to all of our submitters. And I think, you know, the feedback I have is that they know you're doing a really thorough job. So, right of reply, if you'd like it.
No.
Okay, let's vote. Again, unanimous. Wonderful. And I think that just leaves us with the actions tracking and the forward program, which I think we can take together. Siobhan, would you like to just make a few comments?
Yep, so yes, introducing actions tracking and forward program. Just note on actions tracking, I did notice quite late in the piece that there's some outstanding actions from 2021, so we will make a concerted effort to clean that up for next time. So I'm hopeful that we'll have a lot more complete by the next meeting. Forward program, just draw your attention to some rather contentious ones that are probably coming up in April. We have Thornton Quay Hut Road traffic resolutions, which will be to implement Let's Get Wellington Moving's changes on that corridor. And then we've also got the permanent cycleway up Brooklyn Hill as well. So it might finish a bit later than this meeting.
Yeah, oh, thank you for that. Well, look, I'm just going to put these on the table and move them both together. I wondered if the Mayor might like to second. Would you? Yes, lovely. And is there any debate? Okay, well, in that case, let's bring the meeting to a swift conclusion so we can enjoy some morning tea, and we'll vote on these. Great. Just for the conclusion of the meeting, I declare the meeting closed, and we will just say together the karakia. Una hia, unahia ki te uru tapanui, kia wātia, kia mama, te nākau, te tinana, te wairua, e te ara takatū. Ko rā e rongo, whakaaia, aki ki runga, kia wātia, ai rā, kua wātia. Thank you, everyone.